That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to the Flex. This is Joe Howie.
And I'm Matt St. Jean.
And it's finally here, Matt. Today is March 1st, 2021. It seems like it's been well over a year since last March, but we finally made it. This is the month of college basketball. The NCAA tournament starts soon. The Big East tournament starts next week. And the Friars have two very heavy-hitting games this week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This right here is what basketball season is all about. If you follow John Rothstein on Twitter, then you know just how important this month is. He did his little countdown every hour until it was March. And yeah, I mean, you said it feels like it's been well over a year since we were here last, and at the same time, it feels like yesterday. It's been a weird last 12 months, but we made it.
Speaking of yesterday, well, I don't even know how to phrase this correctly, but on February 29th of last year, for context, that was the Providence at Villanova game when Gus Johnson screamed "Woo Pipkins" as he put Gillespie in a spin cycle and hit a fadeaway jump shot to put us up 2 possessions. I guess that's technically today because it was the day after February 28th. I mean, so technically it was a year ago, 365 days, but
that explains why that game didn't come up in my snap memories. I thought I missed a day. I forgot last year was a leap year.
it was. I came to the realization today. I was like, it's not coming up because technically it wasn't this day last year, but at the same time it was this day last year because it was 365 days ago.
Yeah,
but
we'll pick this day. This is the anniversary.
This is it. Woo Pipkins. We can superimpose the Gus Johnson clip over this if we want. We probably won't, but yeah, we're going to start coming up on a lot of anniversaries for this Friars team. I think March 7th will be the anniversary of the senior night game at DePaul, which was Matt and I's last time at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. Today is actually the anniversary of the last time I played college rugby, so there is a lot of nostalgia with last March, a lot of good, and then it's going to turn into a lot of bad. Hopefully, the Friars can turn it around so that this March will only have good memories.
Yeah, and March has been a month it's been a good month for the Friars in recent history. Especially, I mean, you look at those last couple seasons, what they did at the end of last year, that went into March and had some of the most pivotal moments there. You had the Woo Pipkins, so that's February 29th, but we're counting it.
It's technically March.
Yeah, and then the Lawan Pipkin shot the next game against Xavier. So yeah, this is when the Friars come alive. And if they're doing it, couldn't pick a better time. The game will be Wednesday night at St. John's. Providence at St. John's, 7 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. St. John's got the first matchup, 92-81 at Alumni Hall. This is a game the Friars absolutely need to win. Can't afford to lose again this season. That's the mentality right now, but you got to take it one game at a time. So, for this game on Wednesday, what's at the top of the docket for you? What are your first thoughts?
So, Matt, as you and I were discussing, there's a couple of different factors here that I really think need to change from the last time these two teams played. I have three keys to the game. The first one being you cannot play to St. John's identity. And what I mean by that is you can't let them control the pace. I think it was so obvious that we were just trying to sprint out with them with respect to offense and defense last game. We tried to go on scoring runs, and it's not our identity. We don't play fast basketball like that. We play slow, grinded out defensive basketball that essentially turns into good offense. Like I've been saying all season, good defense leads to better offense. So I think we need to play to our identity. We cannot let them control the tempo, or they're going to outrun us. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and that was something the Friars had trouble with in the first one, especially early on. And they caught a red-hot Red Storm. That was the sixth game in that St. John's winning streak. The last game they won in a row before the wheels kind of fell off for them. Put the Friars under 500 for the season. But man, you look at the way they started. The St. John's got out to a 31-14 lead. Started 12 of 14 from the floor, including 7 of 8 from beyond the arc. That was the single best shooting percentage or 3-point field goal percentage, both of them that St. John's has had in a game this season. And it started in those first 10 minutes, 31 points in the first 10 minutes of the game. And I did a little film review before this, trying to figure out what went wrong. And it was a couple of things. One, you got to credit St. John's, but I'm going to play the Ed Cooley card. You got to credit them. They made shots. They weren't all easy shots, and even the easiest shots, you still got to knock them down. And they did that. They did that routinely throughout the game. Sometimes the team just comes in and they're playing good basketball, and there's not a lot you can do. What was noticeable, though, was that Friars played a zone defense, and St. John's was able to find the holes and exploit it. And especially when the Friars missed shots, they would push the pace in transition and get going. Like you said, they would control that tempo and play the game they wanted to play. And like we said for the Friars all the time, you play with confidence, everything starts working well. That's what St. John's did in that first half.
Yeah, and to your point about the zone defense, this is something to give a little nod to our good friend Jack McMahon. He has always said this about the Friars zone defense. He goes, once we switch into a zone, we are so easy to score on. So easy. It's credit, sometimes it does work and it works very well. And I think we did a good job was that Connecticut or Xavier where we were switching from zone to man and it was throwing them off incredibly. And I think it worked well for us. I think it's hot and cold, but a lot of the times it works against us. And these 3-point shooting teams like St. John's find the holes in the zone and go nuts. So I think this goes to your point and to my point, Matt. You got to play Providence defense. You got to play man-up defense. And we saw a good defensive performance against Xavier the last time around. If I'm expecting that caliber. You want to build momentum going into March, it starts on the defensive end. That's what you have to do. Copy that defensive performance and paste it in Queens.
Yeah. And if you go early on in that game against Xavier, one of the buckets that kind of set the tone, David Duke had a transition bucket early on where he was able to find a lane, get to the rim, and finish, which he struggled with at times. But the other part of that is that Friars got to stop at the other end. They played a good paint defense and stopped. I think it was Fremantle who took the shot. They forced the miss, get the rebound, and then you can push it in transition. If you're not playing good defense, then you can't take advantage of those holes. You can't set the tempo. As a Friars team that, like St. John's, does play very well in transition.
Yeah, we do. We saw a lot of that against Xavier. It really, and not to mention momentum. I can't even formulate the point I'm trying to make. When you get a defensive stop, and then you can turn the ball around in transition, it builds momentum for your team. And I think that the lack of fans this season it is really going under the radar with respect to building momentum. And this is where I want to credit the bench and the managers of Providence when we played against Xavier, because they helped build an atmosphere in Alumni Hall last game. It wasn't like that against St. John's. St. John's, that building was like a deflated balloon. The St. John's bench had all the energy. And it's because we weren't emphasizing on offense. They were capitalizing on our turnovers and running out in transition. And look what happened.
Yeah, and that was, especially if you look at the second half of that game, because the first half, it was an anomaly in a lot of ways. If a team comes in and shoots like that against you, at the end of the day, like that happens. And the odds of St. John's putting together another shooting performance like that on Wednesday night are incredibly low. So we'll assume that they regress to the mean at least a little bit. They're not going to shoot quite as well. Even if they shoot well, they're not going to shoot that well. The biggest problem for the Friars in the second half was the turnovers. And this is the one area where St. John's excels. You look at Ken Palm, St. John's defense is 116th in the nation. It's not that good. They are 299th in effective field goal percentage against. They are 263rd in offensive rebounding percentage against, but 34th in turnover percentage, 13th in steal percentage. This is what they do, and it's what leads the offense. You got like Posh Alexander who'll get out there, Julian Champagny. These guys will get around the ball, force steals, and get the offense going that way. And Friars had 8 turnovers in the second half of that ball game. And they took the lead too in the second half. They came back from down 17 points to take the lead. And then you commit too many turnovers. Horkler had 4 turnovers in a row in like a 2.5 minute span. So
Yeah, that
things
was
like
disgusting.
that, those are the mistakes that'll kill you. And St. John's is gonna force turnovers. Like if the Friars are under double-digit turnovers in this game, I'll be surprised because St. John's is good at that. This is a good basketball team. But you have to not have the dumb ones, and you have to play a little bit smarter. When you give up the turnovers, you can't let them turn into easy buckets. And if you're going to give up turnovers, you can't play soft defense and give up a big lead.
Matt, you set me up perfectly for my second point on my keys to the game. Point number 2, take care of the basketball. I don't need to go too in depth because you just did a great job for me, but take care of the basketball, crisp passes, smart passes, don't be stupid with the basketball, please. And I think something that we were missing that game is Jared Bynum, because as you and I have touched on several times throughout the season, David Duke can play the point. He's not an efficient point guard. He's better when he shares the role. Jared Bynum, he is the answer to Duke's struggles running the offense. If you have Bynum running the offense, Duke can play off the ball a little bit. He can play on the ball a little bit. It helps the team so much. We saw the change in dynamic with Jared Bynum against Xavier. I'm sure it's going to be a different scene in the backcourt than it was last time around against St. John's. With Jared Bynum on the floor, we are hopefully going to turn the ball over less, which favors us tremendously against this team.
Yeah, and it opens up the offense for the other guys. I mean, and the offense played well. I mean, the Friars got 81 points, so it's not like the offense didn't do things well. And a lot of that was Nate Watson. I mean, he had 30 points. That's basically all in the paint. That's what Nate Watson does. St. John's has a terrible paint defense. He's going to have those looks. Bynum is really, really good at setting him up. Bynum's entry passes are usually like on point.
Oh my God.
Having him back is going to help a lot. Also, now Breed's coming off the bench. There's less pressure on him. He can do his own thing. Friars had just one bench point in the first meeting. That was from Greg Gant. Now, at least Breed can come off the bench and be a scorer. I think Gant could probably give you a little bit more in a game like this too, because they're so weak in the paint. Croswell probably. I mean, he didn't score the first time, but I think he can give you a little bit more when Watson comes off. And Duke had 9 points in the first meeting, 0 for 3 from beyond the arc. He had 7 assists and he had 6 rebounds. So, I mean, not terrible numbers or anything, but you add Bynum to the fold, Duke should be freed up as a scorer. We saw that against Xavier. He was an assist and a rebound away from a triple-double. And that's the thing. Like, Bynum on the floor doesn't mean that Bynum's always getting the assists. Bynum on the floor means that Duke is in a better position to be a passer and a scorer.
Yep. And backtracking a couple steps, Matt, key number 3 for the Friars is take advantage of your bigs and feed Nate Watson. He had 30 points. And quite honestly, if the loss wasn't so devastating, I think his performance, man, I can't talk tonight. His performance would have really shown. I mean, 30 points. He teetered the line at Creighton, which we knew he was going to because Creighton doesn't have a traditional big. 30 points. That's all I have to say about him.
And you also, you got to add on the fact Horkler also had 19 points. And Horkler has come on better as a scorer since then in some ways. So, like, these bigs are going to have opportunities against St. John's. And especially the keys to the game kind of come in a couple layers here. But the St. John's defense, what they like to do is they're going to score on you because they have a decent offense. Then they're going to set up their press and they're going to force a turnover and try to keep that going. If you're able to get the defensive stops, then they can't set up the press. But obviously, it's basketball. They're going to score to a degree. When they set up the press, you can break it and get behind it. It's a kind of double-edged sword, running a defense as aggressive as St. John's. And it's a reason why they're so weak in the paint. It's not like they have terrible defenders there. They're not great. But you have to spread out the defense. If you run the press, you got 5 guys covering a lot more floor than just the half court. So if you can break it, you can get these transition looks, and you can get a 2-on-1 with Watson and Horkler down low on a single defender. Easy 2 points every time.
Not to mention, Horkler and his ability to score from long range really opens up the paint because it's another scoring threat or
Yeah,
shooting threat rather.
yeah,
You're not going to see. I mean, obviously, I'm sure their game plan for St. John's is to double Nate Watson. What happens when you double him and you leave Horkler alone, or you leave Reeves alone, or you
mhm,
leave Duke alone? We have now taken this guy who was getting around 7 minutes in the first half of the season and turned him into a legitimate threat anywhere
yeah,
on the floor.
yeah. Horkosh really come on. I mean, just ask some of those guys over at Xavier right now how they're feeling after watching Horkler slam it in their faces a couple times. And he was 4 of 6 from beyond the arc the first Providence St. John's game. Like
Yeah,
he's done against them. And you look at the stats, like Reeves was 3 of 8, and Horkler was 4 of 6. The rest of the team was, let me do some quick math here, 1-4. It's 1 for whatever is left for attempts. I mean, Duke was 0 for 3.
1 for
Reed was
12.
1 for 5. Yeah. 0 for 2 for Gant, 0 for 1 for Goodine, 0 for 1 for Monroe. And it's not terrible. I mean, the team has shot 31% from beyond the arc. That's not terrible. It's below the season average, but not terrible. The offense is not the reason why they lost that game. They scored
No.
81 points. Problem is the defense.
Yeah.
49 points allowed in the first half, 43 points allowed in the second half, and that's where they got to tighten things up.
Yeah, I mean, we can break it down as much as we want. Big picture, you need to clean it up defensively. That goes back to, you can't try and run with them. You got to try and trip them. Because if you try and out sprint a team that's known for running marathons, you're going to get smoked.
Yeah,
That's really what it comes down to.
yeah, and that's the key to the game right there. Right, we're cycling it right back up to the top. You have to control the pace. St. John's is by far the fastest team in the Big East, and Friars. Here's the thing: the Friars can use that to their advantage, and they should. The Friars should push the pace at points because you can break St. John's defense really easily that way. But you have to do it smartly. You have to know when to tap on the brakes, and you have to play good defense. That'll slow things down. That'll get St. John's out of that press, and their defense isn't good enough to stop you in the half court anyway. If the Friars offense plays like it did the first time, or if the Friars offense plays like it did last time out against Xavier.
Yeah. Yep.
And you just got to watch. I mean, it's the three-headed monster. Last game was Champagne, Dunn, and Alexander. All three of those guys in double figures. And Champagne scored 24 points. Alexander scores 21. What kills you? Look at a guy like Rasheem Dunn, only 13 points, but 5 of 7 from 2-point range. And that's a guard. Like he's just getting easy looks and a lot of that, and 10 assists to boot. Like those are the
defense.
yeah. And I mean, I think this is something Ed Cooley's been focused on the mental side of things recently, and I think this is one area where he's trying to improve the team.
Yeah, this is something that we've talked about a lot, and it's on-ball defense, dribble drive defense, and it's really, really suffered this year, which has me anxious going into this game because, yes, we're coming off of a stellar performance against a Xavier team that was down though. Now St. John's is down too. They're not going to be shooting the ball as well as they did back in our gym, but what worries me is this Friars team seems to be so inconsistent defensively. Like I think the great example is 2 road games. One's at Creighton, one's at Villanova, the 2 top teams in the league. At Creighton, you put on a great defensive performance. You hold them to 70 in their own gym, and you upset the 11th ranked team in the country. A few days later, you cough up 40 points in the second half to Villanova. Where's the defensive edge there? So what worries me about this team is the inconsistency on defense and the inconsistent defensive performances. I think in order for us to at least have a shred of hope at making the NCAA tournament, you have to string together a series of 5 to 6 strong defensive performances, and they all have to be wins.
Yeah, and I mean the Friars they've won 3 of their last 4. And you look at that, you held UConn to 59 points, you hold DePaul to 47, and you hold Xavier to 68 in those. And if you're playing a good game against St. John's, I mean, they might score in the 70s because it's a talented offense, but that's still a strong defensive performance.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Villanova. We're not even going to look ahead to Villanova yet. You got to focus on St. John's.
No, at this point in the season, you cannot. If you're the Providence Friars men's basketball team, the fans, you guys, we can do whatever we want. But if you're the Providence Friars men's basketball team, you cannot look ahead to Saturday because you're going to get caught in the trap game.
Yeah.
And It's self-explanatory.
Yeah, and the Friars have the time to focus on this one. They're 3-0 this season when they have at least a week to prepare for a game. That's the Seton Hall game on the road earlier this year. That's the last time out against Xavier, and the other one. Okay, sorry, they're not 3-0 because they did lose at Xavier earlier this season. They're 3-1. 3-1. They had the loss to Xavier. The other ones, they had the win at Creighton. It's the other one where they had that long time to prepare.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is they should be locked in. I know Ed Cooley was talking on the radio show, his Ed Cooley show, about how they've been working on meditation and mindfulness and how he's been trying. I mean, it's COVID right now. Nobody has good mental health. Everybody's frustrated. Everybody's down, and everybody's having a tough time. And Cooley was talking about how he's been in that same boat. So it was about hitting the reset button. It's, hey, we're playing a sport for fun. It's about playing with joy. It's about enjoying playing with your teammates. This is a special opportunity. And at the end of the day, I mean, these are college students. Like, if the Friars lose out, a certain amount of what Ed Cooley is doing is saying, hey, there's a lot going on in the world. So let's go out there and make sure we enjoy playing. And quite frankly, with the talent this team has, if they go out there and enjoy playing and play with confidence, they're going to beat most teams that they play, regardless of what conference they're in. This is a very talented team, and I think that much is apparent. So I think that, I mean, there's and Cooley was talking about how that focus extends to him as well, how he was getting too down, being too critical, and not bringing that energy that he needed into the building. So if they're able to find that mental well-being, that rest, that zen, then that's going to be good for these guys. And I don't think they're going to overlook St. John's. I think they're going to be focused in on this game. And it's just a matter of going out there and actually executing.
I'm really glad you brought up that point about playing with joy, Matt, because there's a couple of things I want to touch on here. That 6-game win streak last season, every game, those guys had smiles on their faces.
Mm-hmm.
Lawan Pipkins and quite honestly, I think Pipkins and Duke in the backcourt, they had the biggest, like, teethiest smiles that you could see during the game. When Pipkins hit that shot on Gillespie the 1 year ago today, Woo Pipkins, like, Gillespie's on the ground, like, Pipkins turns around and flexes at the camera and, like, flares his nostrils. Like, that's, you have to be having fun to do that. You know what I mean? Like, if Pipkins was stressed, like, oh, this is a tight game, he would have just gone trotting back on defense. Instead, he turns around, flexes his muscles, and if you watch the replay, all 5 guys on the court, like, shake their fist or they do some sort of celebration. Like, that's not something you see very often when a team is struggling. And I think you saw the same thing, the same type of energy, positive energy against Xavier. And the run I want to talk about is in the first half. Duke hits a really deep 3. Travis Steele calls a timeout. Next offensive possession, Allen Breed extra pass, Reeves corner 3. Another timeout. And Reeves and Gant go and they, like, jump up, they hit into each other, whatever. The next offensive possession, well, I guess there was a foul, 2 free throws. Next offensive possession, Reeves 3 again. It was the 3 made 3 field goals in a row were all 3-pointers. And the joy that you saw on these kids' faces after making each of the shots, when this team plays happy, this team plays well. So I'm really glad you brought that point up.
And you go back, I was watching some of the stuff back from 2018 earlier today. You go back, look at the comeback over Xavier and the comeback over Villanova, and then beat Villanova, but the comeback to force overtime in that game. And you could just tell reading the body language, these guys aren't stressed. They kind of have this feeling like we're playing with house money. We're playing to have fun. We know we're talented. We're loose. We're just going to go out there and play. You're going to hate me saying this, Joe, but this is a Providence podcast, so there's a lot of Red Sox fans listening, I bet. You go back to the comeback over the Yankees in 2004, like, that was a team that was loose and relaxed. Even though they were down, it's all right. We're just going to go play. And that's a dangerous team to play against because it's a team with nothing to lose. It's a team that's just going out there and playing. And that's, I mean, you've seen it the last couple of weeks outside of the Friars. It's what makes college basketball so much fun. Anybody can upset anybody. You got to bring your game on any given night. And it's March. There's no better time of year for sports than this because anybody can beat anybody. The Friars have that potential right now.
Yeah. And to your point about the Red Sox playing with joy, is that the same joy that the Yankees have played with the past 2.5 seasons where we've completely had our way with the Red Sox? Just asking for a friend.
How many championships in that time?
How many championships overall? Oh, how many
Uh,
were you alive for? All right, that's a great comeback. We'll move on from this because Boston fans are so predictable.
I didn't even say that. That you said that.
I know, but that is the comeback. Every single time I get into this discussion with a Boston fan, how many were you alive for? Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I'm still a Yankees fan. I can still celebrate the history.
Speaking of history, I mean, there's only one team that's come from down 3-0 to win a series. So,
Let's keep it to
well, yeah, we'll keep it back on the Friars, where we can be friends about this one. Friars, if you want to look big picture, currently sitting at 69th on Ken Palm, and 79th in the net. That's on the outside looking in, but I'm going to read one bracketology. This is Bowertology, which is this guy does a really good job breaking down the bubble. This is what he said about the Friars. And as per usual, we'll keep one eye open for Providence, which has a surprisingly decent resume despite being 12-11 and ranking 79th in the net. Any chance for a bid seems incredibly unlikely without a deep Big East tournament run, but the Friars have pulled off the incredibly unlikely before. I don't know if I can sum it up any better than that.
I mean, that's basically the past 3 or 4 seasons in a nutshell. Is the entirety of the season. We're here and there, we're up and down. We make no real argument for an at-large bid.
Yeah.
And then in like the final stretch, it's like, no, 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 we're serious. We want to play in the NCAA tournament. Like that's basically how it goes. I don't think that's it. Personally, I don't like that trend. I don't think it's one that's sustainable in the long term. But as a fan, I really want it to poke its head out this year because I'd like the talent on this team to play in March and not in the NIT, not in the CBIT. Like
Play
if
real
we wind up
basketball
in,
here.
if we wind up in one of those tournaments, what the narrative is going to be, oh, it's a postseason tournament playing in March, blah 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 blah. But no one cares about the NIT. No one cares about the CBIT.
And I mean, you want to look at resume building right now? As of this moment, this game at St. John's is going to be a quad 1 game. Friars are 2-5 in quadrant 1 at the moment. If this holds this way, which, to be fair, if the Friars beat St. John's, they might drop out of quadrant 1. But at the moment, it would be that. If they win, then you're looking at a team with 3 quadrant 1 wins and no losses in quadrants 3 or 4. That's not too bad.
That's not too shabby.
Yeah. The flip side of this is that if the Friars win and St. John's drops from 73 to 76 in the net, then the home loss against St. John's becomes a quadrant 3 loss. So Friars may have to do some rooting for St. John's on Saturday after this, but you got to win this game first. Is it prediction time, Joe? Are we about that time?
I think it's about that time.
All right. What do you got?
So I've really been trying to wrap my head around this one. I want to be positive because I think the Xavier game gave us a lot of momentum. I think the introduction of Bynum and Horkler as serious pieces to the starting five it's intangible, really. You cannot go on about what those two did and what Reeves did really too. What the role players in that game against Xavier were really, really key to the win. And I think that if you can get those guys to play with the same momentum, the same energy, the same joy as they played against Xavier, it should be an easy win for the Friars. With that said, the St. John's Red Storm, Mike Anderson should get Big East Coach of the Year. I don't know if he will,
Absolutely.
but if I was on the voting panel, he would be my pick for Big East Coach of the Year. I don't care about Jay Wright. I don't care about Kevin Willard or Coach McDermott. Mike Anderson should be the Big East Coach of the Year. I really think this one's going to be a toss-up because St. John's needs this win. We need this win. we're both playing for a chance to get back onto the bubble potentially.
Yeah, both teams need two wins this week to get back onto that bubble.
It's going to come down to who's more desperate. I think we're a little bit older than St. John's, and we're a little bit more tenured in this category. I am going to pick the Friars 85-81. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I think we're going to be able to hold them to fewer than us. 85-81 Friars.
All right. I'll say for me, I'm a little bit worried, not about the first half of the game, or the first game, but the second half. The Friars still came back and made that a battle. Nate Watson feasted at times. They still turned the ball over too much. They got frustrated by St. John's, and they got beat in the second half too. And that's what's going to extrapolate here. And that's a home game. Now you're going on the road in the Big East against a team that is dangerous right now. All that stuff we said about the Friars having nothing to lose, St. John's is there too. This is a talented group, a well-coached group that's going to come out and play with a lot of effort. Friars can't just walk in there and expect to win because St. John's is not going to hand it to them. They're going to play aggressive basketball, and they're going to play good basketball. Last time they played was over a week ago, so St. John's is going to be rested. Last time out, they got killed by Villanova, and they've lost 2 in a row now because they lost at home to DePaul too. You know that they're going to want to come out and reassert themselves, and they have a group that plays with energy too. I mean, Posh Alexander's a cocky guy. Julian Champagne's a cocky guy. They're going to come out, and they're not going to be like. This is a good team, and that worries me because I think the Friars can come out and play a good game and still lose because you're on the road in the Big East. At the moment, until I see the Friars actually stringing together quality games, back-to-back, I mean, the Friars have won 3 out of 4. 2 out of those have been really quality games. They weren't back-to-back. They were separated by like 2 weeks. Until they do it back-to-back, I'm going to have a hard time predicting it. I think St. John's is going to score. I'm going to say St. John's like 81, Providence 75, something in that range.
All right.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a player of the game, who is it?
I mean, for the Friars, it has to be Nate Watson. 30 points in the first one. St. John's cannot stop him. So until they prove that they can stop him, he's the X factor for the Friars. What about you?
Nate Watson as well. I mean, by the way, if I'm Nate Watson too, and I dropped the first 30 piece of my career in a home loss, you know I'm salivating at the opportunity to take it back, to drop another 30, and to take a win at that same team's gym. I mean, revenge is sweet when it comes in the form of college basketball.
Oh, yes, it is. And you know he's going to come out and he's going to play a very good game. Yeah, he's going to want that aggressiveness. He's going to play with that intensity. So I think we're going to get a close one no matter what. I think these are 2 teams that are somewhat evenly matched in a lot of ways, and I think we're in for a fun game. I will, since they're playing Wednesday night, I'm gonna ask you this as well, Joe. Different game, but the late game on Wednesday night is Creighton at Villanova. Give me 60 seconds here. What do you think happens?
Whew. It's at Villanova, right? It's definitely. I don't think Creighton's gonna beat them by 15 again. Although I will say that, other than every Friars win this season, that might have been my favorite Big East game to watch the Wildcats completely crumble. Because I've been saying all season, I think that Creighton is better than Villanova, and everyone on Villanova Twitter was like, no, Villanova's the best. Okay, you guys lost by 15 at Creighton, so you're obviously not the best if that's your competitor for Big East regular season champion. With that said, Ed Cooley in his radio show today said that Villanova's playing for a lot. They're playing for a regular season title, which they didn't get last year. It's like they shared it, but the regular season champion doesn't get the 3 seed in the Big East tournament. Sorry, Nova. I'm ripping on them, but I think they're going to win because I think Jay Wright plays really good revenge ball.
Yeah,
I also think it's just going to make it interesting too that it's at Villanova.
Yeah. After watching what Villanova did to St. John's the second time they played, after St. John's got them the first time, and then Villanova stunk it up at Butler, but most of it was shooting. They were 2 of 27 from beyond the arc. That's not happening again.
You live by the 3, you die by the 3.
Yeah,
They lost by 12.
Yeah, I think Villanova is probably going to win this one pretty handily. Not even because, like, I think these two teams are evenly matched, but I think you're going to see a Villanova team come out and play with a lot of intensity.
Not to mention, like, Zagorowski and Gillespie were at one point in conversation for Big East Player of the Year. Zagorowski still might be, but those are two guys that I don't think will get it,
No,
personally.
it's probably between Mamu and Robinson Earl at this point, with maybe an outside shot at David Duke, Julian Champagny, and yeah, I think
Well,
it would.
let's save this for
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later. But yeah, I think that just about does it for this game. You have any final words?
Um, I don't think Villanova's going to blow them out. I think Creighton's going to make it a really tight game. I think we're going to see a lot of Ballack bombs again. But to the Friars and St. John's, that's the more important game in my eyes. Realistically, I probably won't even watch the Creighton Nova game if it overlaps with ours too much. I only care about Providence, really.
That's what we're about here.
Feed Nate. Don't turn the ball over. Play tough defense. Keys to the game. You do that, you win. This is a good St. John's team.
Yeah, I think that sums it up right there. Those are the keys to the game. Friars are taking on St. John's 7 o'clock Wednesday night. That's on CBS Sports. This is the key late season battle here. Friars at 12 and 11 on the season, and 8 and 9 in conference play. St. John's also 8 and 9 in conference play. So the winner will be ahead in the standings. Winner should be there at 6th place, depending on what Xavier does. And yeah, everything is tightening up now. Everything is a must-win game. So make sure that you are following us on Twitter at the Flex Hoops. Make sure you're following us and subscribe to us wherever you're listening to this so you can continue to get our content. We're going to have at least a handful more shows during this season. We're going to have our post-game episode for this one. We're going to give you all the content for the Villanova game Saturday. We'll be here for the Big East tournament, and we'll see what comes after that. So you're not going to want to miss any of it. Make sure you stay right here for it so you can get the best Friars coverage in the business. And yeah, as always, thank you for listening.
Go Friars. Woo Pipkins.